HooHooHooRobin.
Got Mike Baker outside the studio.
Yes.
I saw his new show, America Declassified, and I liked it.
Yes.
I absolutely liked it. They take like 3 stories, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 every episode?
There's 3, well, 2 or 3.
Because I watched yours, I watched the second one, and I tapped out for the third.
Yeah.
It's not because it sucked. I was just done with it because I was watching the show for you, and I liked it there, Mike Baker.
Oh yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You went down to Dallas to talk about the JFK thing.
We did, and it. Can
I ask you sorry.
Yeah.
Before you went down to Dallas, what did you think about the JFK assassination?
Ooh.
Did you think it was a conspiracy? Before you did your own research?
He knows.
Yeah. I mean,
He was working inside.
The file,
you have the file, the outfit, the other angles.
I mean, honestly,
a new medium called video. Of course.
When you go into training, that's actually the thing that people don't know. The first week, they tell you all these things.
Right.
And
just to keep you in line.
Right. And so...
I think that's like an old Bill Hicks bit or something. Yeah. Where they show you the basement of the White House.
The new president, They bring him down.
I didn't have a real point of view one way or the other beforehand. I mean, I felt as if with the conspiracy, I understood why people wanted to think that there was something there, or still believe that there's something there. And the show itself, America Declassified, on Sundays on Travel Channel at 10 p.m.
Nice.
See how I do that now?
Yes.
Yeah. I think a week's worth of training for that. And but I understand why there's this desire to have something bigger than just one lone, psychotic out there with a rifle. Yeah. And so what we try to do with the show during the episodes when we're talking about a mystery or a conspiracy is to try to peel back the layers and then let the viewers make a decision. We're not trying to just say, this is it, this is the answer, because it would be asinine, right?
Yeah,
you got 20 minutes for a story, perhaps, and we're not gonna solve everything. But we take aspects of the mystery, aspects of the conspiracy. We take the viewers behind the scenes at restricted or top secret facilities where we get access.
Jesse Ventura did that.
Yeah, did he?
Boy.
Boy, did he.
It was a little different, though,
There's a name I haven't heard in ages.
I don't see,
in ages. He's popping up again.
I don't see Mike Baker
out
out there at fucking, Roswell, talking about UFOs.
Oh, jeez. No, I can guarantee the viewers that there will be no alien stories. There's no alien stories. As much as the viewers may want them, we're staying away from them.
Jesse Ventura. Yeah. I think the whole conspiracy thing, I think people love conspiracies because they feel powerless without them. If you think of the Kennedy assassination, 9/11, things like that, if you just take it at face value, we're very vulnerable.
Right.
Is a president that vulnerable where a lone gunman can screw up the course of the country?
Well, back then, sure.
Yeah,
right.
Not anymore, because now we look at our president and he's very, very protected. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's layers you just don't even see. Yeah, I mean,
but if history has taught us one thing.
Right.
So let's get into the JFK thing.
Sure.
Talk about that episode and what you did.
Well, it was fantastic. We went down. We got the permission from the authorities. We didn't just spring on them and surprise it. And
you didn't get a lot of permission.
We didn't get a huge amount of
permission. And I'll tell you
why.
Mike, I'll tell you why.
Why is that?
Because you couldn't stop the traffic.
Well, no, we did stop traffic. We did stop traffic. We didn't stop pedestrian
traffic.
There's
one shot where I'm like, he's going to get hit by a car.
Oh, that was okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right.
So you didn't get a lot of clearance.
We didn't lock the city down.
Yeah, you couldn't get a couple cops to go, look, they're filming something for the Travel Channel. Mike Baker, ex-CIA, is on the X. They have the famous X down there where, you could stand on, and that's where JFK got his head fucking blown off. Yeah. And you're doing a little quick, I'm just proving that I saw the show. Yeah. And you're doing a little thing on the X, and I see the cars coming, and I'm like, this is the Travel Channel. They should have been able to stop the traffic for you.
And the funny thing was, I kept saying, okay, well, go back at that. Let's do it one more time, but try it from this perspective. And so we'd wait for the light to change. I'm thinking, well, okay, it's very high end. And you can see all the guys up at the traffic light thinking, I'm gonna hit this motherfucker.
and to them, it's just another traffic light. They live in that town. They don't give a fuck about the JFK JFK assassination. They just want to get home. So when that light turns green, because me and Jimmy witnessed this, they start flying down that sort of, it's kind of a hill.
Right.
A little bit of a hill right
everybody's
there.
worried they're going to get popped if they can't, so they speed through.
Well,
they don't want history to repeat itself.
Right.
And we saw, I forgot if it was a lady.
A woman almost
it
got
was
hit.
a woman, right?
geez.
We saw a woman almost get fucking crushed because people assume, well, that's where JFK got, shot. It's an X. I'm a tourist. Of course, I could just go out there and get a picture.
Right.
They don't even notice that cars have come in.
Invincibility. If
It's
I
a
go out
working
there.
public road.
But we saw a lady almost get fucking. I mean, it was close, man.
It's 3 lanes of traffic. They're moving, like you said. By the time they hit that little
They're flying.
slope, they're flying. So
anyway, so you went down there.
So we went down there, and if anybody hasn't been down to Dealey Plaza or hasn't been to the Book Depository Museum, they should go because it's a fantastic experience. But so what we were looking at was kind of walking back through Lee Harvey Oswald's story, but at the same time looking at the conspiracy from a couple of different perspectives. And one witness in particular was quite compelling, a guy named Lee Bowers, who worked at the train station. He was a station master up in the switching tower that is actually behind the grassy knoll. And his testimony was about the second gunman, about seeing a muzzle flash, seeing something behind the picket fence that looks down over the grassy knoll onto the road. And so we ran some forensic testing on that, just basic things to see whether Lee Bowers could have been credible. Could he have seen what he thought he saw or what he claimed he saw? Looking at his death, he died.
Wait! Before you move on to that, sorry, you're downplaying it, but you got access to that tower.
We did.
You're one of the first media people to ever do that, right?
Right. And thank you for calling me a media person.
The media people.
My life is now complete. So we did. We got access to the switching tower.
How did you get
up
access?
There. You know what? We told them we were the federal authorities. No,
we're doing an investigation.
No, Travel Channel worked very hard, and the production company Indigo Films that worked with them on this. They worked very hard at all of these various stories, and it was really impressive what they were able to do in the places we were able to go. And I mean, we went down to the country's only underground burial vault for radioactive waste. We went down to White Sands Missile Range, out to Ground Zero in the Mercury Town. I mean, we went to places that were really fantastic, and they really worked their ass off to get access for this, because again, the idea, let's take the viewers someplace where they couldn't normally go on their own, or someplace that's got a mystery or a conspiracy around it.
Give them some information and let them mix that in what they know already and see what they come up with. Right.
Informative, entertaining. There you go. But
so you're in the switching tower.
So we're in the switching tower. We ran some tests. We had a shooter at the picket fence, firing off several rounds. The first time that's happened in 50 years since the assassination, and we did stop traffic for the tests there. And if you want to get an interesting result, go down to Dealey Plaza, because we couldn't stop the pedestrians from wandering about, and fire a rifle.
Oh shit!
In Dealey Plaza. It was highly interesting.
Did people kind of jump a little bit, get a little jumpy?
Yeah, there was a busload of Japanese tourists, and
boy.
they were all. They were loving it afterwards. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. But we fired off several rounds from there, and then I had a chance to do the same. In terms of determining the nature of the shot, and how difficult would it have been for a second shooter from behind that position to get this thing done. And then what are they going to do? How do they get off the X? And then we went up and we looked. They gave us terrific access up in the book depository in terms of getting to the actual vantage point for Lee Harvey Oswald.
That's glassed off. They let you behind the glass?
Well, they didn't put us behind the glass. They led us to a no access area right above it. Okay. So we were one floor above the 6th floor, but we were at the window, and they allowed us to go up there, and it was very interesting. They wouldn't allow us to take a shot from there. I think they felt that might have been too insensitive.
A little much.
Yeah, stretching it a little bit too far. But it was.
What was your opinion looking out that window? Feasible?
Yeah, it's 175 feet. Right? It's 175 feet.
Which isn't that far of a shot, really.
It's not that far. The digital analysis or forensics work on the Zapruder film it looks at about 8.2 seconds or so for getting 3 shots off with a bolt-action rifle. People say, "Well, it's Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a mook. He had no training." Well, he was in the military, and he did get his marksman badge, his credentials.
He was a sharpshooter first, I think. He tested marksman before he left the military, but he did test sharpshooter earlier than that.
Yeah, and then if you don't keep practicing, which a lot of guys don't, then they test and they get a lower certification. But it's
not like he got the headshot first round off either.
No, and it's not like if you've got training, if you've got some level of training. You've got no wind or weather conditions. You've got a target that's moving maybe 5 miles an hour, dead on line with you. You've already recce'd. He worked at the book depository. And so he had a chance. He knew exactly where he wanted to be. He knew exactly what that shot was going to look like. And so in terms of just from an operational point of view, could he have done it? Well, yes. I don't think there's any doubt he could have done it.
But what I don't understand, why take the shot after the turn?
Because to take it the other way, the Secret Service would be looking up at you.
Is that what they're thinking?
Why else? If you took it head on,
hanging out the window, right?
Yeah, you took it head on. Every agent is looking in your direction. Every cop's looking in your direction.
Think of it, as he makes that turn, so the focus is all heading down now.
Sure.
And so as he makes that turn, and now he's also right in line.
Somewhere else. I understand.
So he had a very good line of sight. Now, does that mean that it knocks out the conspiracy theory and all those other angles? And was he acting? And this is a very interesting point. Was he acting on his own, or I think he was the trigger guy. I think he was the shooter. But were there other factors at play?
Right.
So we look at Lee Bowers. We look at how he died as a witness in a very mysterious fashion. And Belzer's on there. Richard Belzer's on there talking about the conspiracy theory. He's very interesting.
For Bells, yeah.
And so it's good. But he died in a car crash on a 2-lane country road by himself when he went off the road and crashed into a small bridge.
That sounds like it's written for a movie,
but
right there.
Is that odd though? When you I've heard about all these days, and I thought I remembered it was a car crash. It's like it's a single car crash. They happen all the time. Because he was tied to the Kennedy assassination, it sounds ominous. But single car crashes happen all the time.
And then his body was cremated that evening.
All the more reason to do it that way, so people could go. It happens all the time.
This was a great point you guys made. And they didn't cremate like they do today.
No,
it was a lot rarer to cremate a body back in '63.
Yeah, and he was cremated that night, according to the reports.
Wow,
which is a little unusual. His family was, who knows what that was all about. But the problem is that so many of these folks have passed away, and to a lot of
it's been 50 years.
It's been 50 years exactly. A lot of the people, exactly. So I think that's mysterious. Right. 50 years and they're still not as young as they used to be.
But Mike, let me ask you, of all this stuff, what is it that made you think? Because believe me, it's hard to swallow the single gunman theory, but that's what I've come to believe again, because no other theory, no conspiracy theory held water. None of them. Like the whole, the guy was in and they shut up all the witnesses. It's so illogical. Well, they would use this asshole Oswald, who was an asshole, who had already fired another public official. This is the last dumb motherfucker you'd use for this.
It's very dysfunctional. He had a failed experience trying to start a new life in Russia, and so you're absolutely right, and that's what I always kind of lean towards with some of these stories. Like we did an episode on Martin Luther King, and we were down in Memphis. Again, sort of great access. Was up on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel outside his door with the Reverend Kyles, who was with him when he was shot. He and Ralph Abernathy were in there, and they all started to come out. And Dr. King stopped, leaned over the railing to talk to Jesse Jackson and Andrew Young and a couple others down there, and then he got popped. And so we did again, same thing. We were running some forensic tests. We talked to a lot of people. Very interesting. And the same idea. People didn't want to think that it was just James Earl Ray, shooting out of a second-story bathroom window in a rooming house across the street. They wanted to think it was something different. But when you look at the conspiracy, to Jim's point, you think, really? So because the conspiracy theorists in that story, they're thinking it's Hoover, it was the Memphis PD, it was the mob, and it was military. All of them working together, and at the end of it all, they decide on James Earl Ray, as the guy who's going to be the fall guy. And then they let him go, and he escapes to London for 2 months and gets picked up. So a lot of the conspiracy theories are you can set aside. But some of them do linger. Some of them are you get the feeling they're always going to be unsettled.
What's the lingering one in JFK, or a lingering aspect of it?
Well, people, the same thing. People don't want to believe that it was Lee Harvey Oswald. And I think what you said was actually right. I think that they, was actually right. I think you said something that was actually right.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, golly gee.
Gosh. Yeah, I know. How stupid was that statement? But I think, what when they look at JFK, you think about the time frame. And we weren't used to seeing stories every other day about some nut job, with a rifle going into a school or wherever and shooting it up. And it just, news traveled slower. People's expectations were different. And certainly at that time, the idea that it was just one man who impacted the nation so much was very hard to believe. Yeah. And it fueled this idea that there was something else. And the longer it stays out there, I think, the longer it lingers, it's harder to get rid of.
Right. What is a part of it that you think made you think it might be a conspiracy?
Well, there was another witness you had in the stairwell.
Yeah, there was a witness that
never came forward before?
Was never interviewed. There were a lot of people that weren't interviewed, which is interesting, but not completely atypical in investigations. I mean, things get missed. Interviews don't happen. But she was there in a position where if Lee Harvey had come running down that stairwell, given her position, and she was credible in terms of checking her out, she would have seen something. She would have seen him. But what instead was, no, I didn't see anybody coming down the stairwell. And she was clear as a bell. She was a sharp individual. I'm not saying, again, I don't say that refutes the fact that he was the gunman. What's the most compelling part of the JFK conspiracy? I mean, for me, I spent so much time behind a curtain, really, at the outfit that I'm not a conspiracy guy by nature. And so, I went into it, with an open mind, but I didn't, I'm not a skeptical person by nature. I tend to think that sometimes things are just as simple as they seem.
Right.
But when sorry to interrupt you, what you say about the one who didn't see him come down the steps? I saw an interview recently with a kid, a young black guy. He was probably 16 when it happened, and they re-interviewed him now in his adult life, many years later, who saw Oswald poke out the window, or somebody with a rifle poke out that window. And there was a photographer, and I want to say he's the one that won the Pulitzer for snapping the Jack Ruby, that death photo of Oswald. And his great regret was that he didn't snap the photo when he saw the guy with the gun. And the day before, saw somebody with a rifle leaning out that window, or in that window. The assassination, I'm sorry. At the he said one of his great regrets was not snapping that fucking photo.
Why wouldn't he?
I think
they call it Secret Service.
I think you got one good picture there, fella.
But that was like his redemption.
Don't worry about it.
Because they didn't think in the moment. You saw all these cops and stuff around. It was
if you're a photographer, don't you just kind of shoot everything around you?
Oh, maybe, yeah. But maybe he missed the shot. Maybe he saw it and missed it.
Yeah. Well, that could be. That could also be, Secret Service, because Secret Service are wrecking sites like that all the time, and so it could well have been somebody.
Something you don't see every day, whether it's Secret Service or Oswald. You're going to take the picture. I think.
Maybe he tried to and missed it.
Yeah. But every episode we're doing something that I hope the viewers are going to find really interesting, and we're trying to approach it from the point of view that they want something more out there. They want some information. Obviously everybody wants to be entertained. Not every show can be two dames fighting over a wedding dress. So
people are fascinated by that whole thing, though, conspiracies and what happened. Well, they want more information. What else are you working on for that?
We did a variety of things. We did the Escape from Alcatraz, the 62.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's
cool. What do you think happened with that? I've been to Alcatraz.
Yeah, fascinating place, and it's fantastic.
I love Alcatraz.
They gave us access. Unbelievable.
You get to see that the average tourist doesn't.
Right, and we were there at nighttime. Because
some of those tunnels that they have the ropes across, I'm like, man, I wish I knew someone here so they could take me on a tour.
We didn't start working. We didn't really start filming each day until after everybody had left. The tourists had left, and so we were there basically through the night.
Wow!
And that's an interesting experience, walking around. And they literally just let us, So I wandered all over that place. And at nighttime, it's a pretty fucked up place.
It's got to be pretty creepy, right?
Yeah, but
it's pretty cool.
We went in.
Have you ever been in it?
No, never been there.
That's awesome.
Again, same thing. People should be going to these places, and I say that over and over during these shows. I said, if you haven't been here, you got to come take a look at this. I mean, there's so many places around this country to see. But Alcatraz, we looked at Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers.
How about Charlie Butts?
Yeah,
Charlie Butts.
Now we got to go back and do a whole new story.
Yeah.
So Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, they went on about a year-long effort to get themselves out of Alcatraz, and it was an incredible effort. And they basically they discovered that the walls were crumbling because of age and the conditions, the weather conditions, and the type of concrete. And So every night they would kind of use a spoon or whatever they had. Frank Morris made like a little makeshift electric drill out of a motor he took out of a vacuum, and they would drill and drill and drill and drill through this concrete until they'd made spaces. And when you look at these spaces and think what they did, they crawled behind it. And what they'd found was from other inmates who were being put to work by the guards to do plumbing, they'd found that there was a 3-foot crawl space behind their cells, in between the cell blocks. And so if they could get through the back wall of their cell, these cells are tiny, they'd get into this crawl space. And then they found, over the course of a year, they crawl up these pipes, they get to that top of the cell block, and they figured out a way to get onto the roof to get through. They had to cut through rebar, and they tried a variety of things to get through the rebar in this concrete. And what they finally settled on was they would take dental floss from the dental shop, and then they would take contact cement from the shoe shop. They all had to work. It's not like today. These guys all had to work.
Right,
and
yeah.
They had to take contact, and they would cover the dental floss in contact cement, and then they cover it with silica that they got from the dental shop, and they would let it harden, and then they would use it like a saw, like a little bandsaw
type of,
right.
Yeah.
And they would just day after day,
How
night after
long
night.
did that take? Holy shit!
It took about a year, and they could only work at night after the lights off, and most of the prisoners
they were
in
really
on it.
tired.
Well, most of the prisoners were in on
because
it.
because you had to make noise, and so every time they would prisoners would start making noise or banging pots or whatever, and some of the things that these guys did were really impressive in terms of just trying to get yourself out of there. Now they had some time on their hands, right?
Yeah, true. Where are they going?
Yeah, and then they did, but they didn't know really much at all about the tides, the ebb, the current in the bay. But then they made a raft out of raincoats issued from the prison, and using contact cement. And then they made some homemade paddles out of some wood that they stole from pallets. And one night they took off in November '62, and that was the last anybody heard from them. So we did the same thing. We recreated the raft out of the same crappy material, made some wooden paddles, and tried to.
Did the raft hold up in the water?
No. It was like, what it was like? It was like trying to paddle a hot tub. It filled up with water, and we're out there in the middle of the bay for hours, right? And just not going anywhere. And, we are going somewhere. We're going out to sea.
The currents are that rough.
Currents are awful, and if you don't get it right, you're screwed. And so, there were a lot of odds stacked against these guys. But just the sheer will of trying to do this and get the hell out. But then you got to think, once they finally got out and over the wall and down the rock and down to the water, and then these three guys, they were just, they weren't pleasant guys. But now they're looking at the bay thinking, so they had to get in the water in the middle of the night in November and try this. It's a fascinating thing. We ended up swimming because the paddling just wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
So how far was it from, I know they thought they went to Angel Island.
Right.
How far was from Alcatraz to the mainland? Was a mile? Or not quite a mile?
It's not that far.
It's not that far. It's about a mile. But their concern was apparently, according to talk to some of what they gathered information from the prisoners, was their concern over being discovered as soon as they set foot on ground. And so because and you could sit in Alcatraz in those days and in the cells, and you could hear the noise of people in the bars and having fun and
at the yacht club.
Right. And so
that's torturous. Yeah,
exactly.
That drove them nuts. They said was hearing the women having a good time at the yacht club.
Right, unbelievable.
Yeah.
But Whitey Bulger was there at the time, and he's been in the news recently, and Al Capone, of course, but we had a chance to talk. We talked to a guy named Patrick Mahoney.
Whitey Bulger was in there?
Whitey Bulger was there when they broke out, but Patrick Mahoney was a guard that night. And a fantastic guy, huge guy, hands like hams, and exactly. So that's the second season. So that's Patrick Mahoney, Declassified.
Big cocks across America.
Shit. Well, you got to keep moving forward. Don't you?
Of course, yeah.
But Patrick Mahoney was there, and he talks about it. And he talks about. And he's just a big guy, and you can see it still burns in him. The idea that these guys got away, whether they lived or not, it just pisses them out.
Whatever. They did get out.
Did they ever find anything in the movie? They find a little bit of the flour, which is nonsense. But did they ever find any trace of the raft or anything?
They didn't. No, not the raft. They found personal effects, and they found a paddle. They found because these guys had. They had taken different time, right? And think about prisoners now escaping, but these guys had actually fashioned out of that same raincoat material. They fashioned a couple of little envelopes or something, and they put some letters in there and things that they wanted to hold on to.
What the fuck?
Letters from mom,
Yeah.
And so they, they found some of that floating in the bay. because they went out, and then the morning call when they went to rouse the prisoners up, they'd go along the line, and one of the I think it was Frank Morris didn't get up. That was the first one they noticed, and so one of the guards walked up to the bars, and said, "To the bars," and which I guess is what they would say, because I just said it, and so he didn't move, and so he kind of went in there and jabbed him, and that's when his paper mache head fell on the floor.
Yeah, they
and
actually
Patrick
built
Mahoney
there.
said that guard screamed like a girl.
Oh, really? That would scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the common belief by the warden and the guards? I mean, do they really think that they got... We all like to believe that they probably drowned, and I hate to say that. Because no one ever heard of any of them. You didn't tell me two brothers and a Frank Morris just went through the next 50 years
disappeared, right?
Without being heard from. Or getting rearrested for anything, or pulled over driving, or
Right.
Yeah. No, most of the guards think they died. And a lot of people think they died.
Yeah.
And I think the odds are hugely stacked against them. And I agree with it. The fact that nobody talked, you're going to tell me, look, people can't keep their yaps shut over a period of time. And that's, to your point again with JFK, you think that somebody's not going to talk in a vast conspiracy.
And what did they do for a living? They didn't commit any more crimes. They didn't, in all those years, you would assume something.
Unless they went
happened.
to Canada. And back then it was easier to lose yourself and change your identity because you weren't tracked electronically. So that's possible they could have went to Canada, given different names and lived, or maybe one of them found a way to get on a plane and went to London. Who knows? But I doubt it.
Right. It would be very difficult. But it was a fascinating thing, and I tell you what, that water, that water's cold.
61 or 62?
Okay. The end of 62, and that water's very cold. And it's teeming with wildlife. I didn't see any sharks, but there's a lot of activity in the bay, and it's fantastic. One of the biggest threats was they were working on the World Cup, what do they call that? America's Cup.
All right.
And so the boats were out there practicing. It was before it started. And, these things are moving like rocket ships. They don't look like sailing boats anymore.
No,
right?
of course not.
Yeah, and spaceships with a sail.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And barely a sail. It's this big old fin. And so this thing was, an Emirates boat was out there rocketing around at 35 or 40. And we're out there in this
with some
stupid, shitty fucking raincoat. We're heading out to sea, boys. And I had two great guys with me. Both are professional swimmers who have swum the bay a lot. And they signed on because they thought, anybody's stupid enough to try this, let's give it a go. But you could see even halfway through, they were completely frustrated with these paddles, and they just wanted to get in the water and swim.
And swim for it.
And I said, no, I think we got to keep paddling. Anyway.
I have heard the theory that they were helped by someone in a boat who met them in the thing. Whether the guy English, played by Paul Benjamin in the movie, I forget I don't know what his real name was, but that the black guy that he might have had somebody meet them, and if that happened, that's the only shot I think they had, is somebody actually met them, on some prearranged night, or maybe one of many nights they were out there waiting for them.
Yeah, all bets are off if they actually were smart enough and capable enough to get that done. But we talked to the U.S. Marshal, who is still on the case. It's an active case. It's an open case.
That's amazing.
Exactly. So it's a great story, but there's a lot of these just like that in this show, America Declassified, on Travel Channel on Sundays at 10 p.m.
It's an open
That's
case,
great, man.
It's an open case, but what is he doing 50 years later? Like, what lead is he tracking down?
You see him on the coast just kicking with his foot, looking for something.
He does this a lot.
Puts his hand over his, to his forehead,
and just squints
into the sun.
Walks up and down Fisherman's Wharf with pictures of the guy saying, have you seen him?
Seen this guy?
Him? Yeah. Imagine him a little bit older now. Have you seen him?
He just interviewed a new witness, and he realized it was one of the actors from Escape from Alcatraz. Yes, I interviewed Officer Zimmerman, who was there when the man chopped his fingers off. Doc.
Alcatraz is an amazing place.
It's fantastic.
And then just the ferry ride out to it is cool,
Yeah. It is. The whole part. And you know what? There was a community out there. The guards lived out there with their families.
With their families.
And they went to school and everything.
Went to school. Patrick Mahoney's, his kids were born out there. Their birth certificates say Alcatraz. Say, federal penitentiary.
And look how close it is. You don't realize how close it really was.
That's
to San Francisco.
That's a long swim in a November cold, though.
Yeah, it is, but if you're swimming for your life, you can probably motivate. Because Frank Morris was, at least the way they painted him in the film, an extraordinarily bright guy. And for guys to be this smart for a year and then just be so dumb they don't realize the water's going to be cold doesn't make a whole lot of sense either.
Right.
Well, I mean, and you're right about that sort of that will to live. And if you got nothing else going for you,
You're swimming for your life.
But at a certain point, at a certain point, the odds just.
It's an amazing plan and execution of the plan right up until you got to get in that fucking water.
Right.
Then it becomes a crapshoot. Right. The rest of it, they did an amazing job of distracting the guards and thinking they were in there with the fake heads and figuring out how to get through that wall, up the pipes, get through the bars, like all that shit.
Right.
And then it's like, great. We got a current that'll pull you right out to sea, freezing cold water. I mean, obviously, they're not swimmers. They're criminals.
No, they've been eating prison food and smoking, and they're not in great shape. But again, you can't underestimate sort of that will, that desire. Yeah. That when you know you got nothing else going, but again, it's just sort of like that. Okay, that takes you so far, but then the reality will kick in. Yeah. But there's a lot of these things. We did the D.B. Cooper, America's hijacking, fantastic.
That's an amazing story too. Yeah.
What do you think about that? Obviously, he's probably dead. But I mean, they found his money under silt or whatever, half of it, or $5,000. Yeah. What do you think?
You know what? That's one where I fall back on the same thing we talked about before. To think that this guy would go out the back of a commercial jet in a business suit, in loafers. So he landed without his shoes. There's no way going out there doing that jump and keeping your shoes on. So he landed in the middle of the Snoqualmie Forest, which is a vast wilderness up in northwest America in Washington State. And the idea that he's going to survive the jump, first of all, and then get himself out of that forest, and is it's very hard to believe.
But he could be living with Bigfoot.
Well, it could be, exactly. And people say, well, I mean, we never saw him. We never spotted him. But when you stomp around, and we did for a long time, when you stomp around in that forest, you realize what it's like for search and rescue. You realize you almost have to step on the individual. And he was jumping out with a military grade chute, OD Green. And so that thing up there, hung up in the trees for all these years, you're just not going to spot it.
Didn't he, by the way, take the least of they said if he really knew what he was doing, he would have taken the other chute. There was a couple of chute options they gave him, and he didn't take the one that he probably was better for him to take.
Which was fascinating, because it's almost like they were just, I mean, who does this? But they gave him $200,000, and they gave him, chute options. He turned it back and said, no, I want, but his choice could be interpreted a couple of different ways. It could be interpreted that he did have some knowledge. I don't think he had any experience, but he had some knowledge of what was going on. But still, same thing. Going out the back of that plane, landing, and then trying to make your way out. If you get hung up in one of those fir trees, which I ended up having to do, and then trying to make your way out of your chute, out of your harness, and figuring out how to, what are you going to do, how to get down, right? and then get the hell out. And it's a tough old place. And the news came out quick. So the next day, the place, it's vast, but there were a lot of people all out there hunting for $200,000, right? Yeah. All the townspeople came from surrounding, towns, and they were out there stomping around, and nobody ever found. And there are people who have been following this case for ever since, for years and years. And I just think it's hard to imagine. They did find some money about 8-9 miles down the watershed, but it's a tough one. But I tell you what, we recreated the jump. A good buddy of mine up in Washington State runs a great jump center, Kapowsin Jump Center, and they did a great job. So it's there's all these things going on. I think if the viewers give it a chance, I think they'll really enjoy it, and we're really doing everything we can to sort of drive eyeballs to the screen.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I learned that. It sounds like a blast.
It's called America Declassified, airing on Sundays on the Travel Channel, 10 p.m.
Yeah, and every viewer gets a free kitchen appliance, personally delivered by Jim and I.
Absolutely.
He doesn't know that, but it's a new plan.
I'll do the funny spatula scene from Stripes on your hiney. Remember I did the spatula with PJ Souls. I'll do that on your hiney. I stunk that scene.
All right, we should take a break.
We'll take a break.
You can hang out, Mike. Certainly.
Amazing.
Thank you very much.
We might be doing some Jocktober next or something, but
if you hang out for this next segment, we will officially alienate you from every other radio show.
Exactly.
That's true.
Well, thank you very much, because it's something new. I love coming in here and talking about whatever the hell's going on in the world.
But now you're a TV star.
It's different. Plugging something is a different feeling.
A project going on. This is it sounds really entertaining and fun and very interesting.
You're going to take out Duck Dynasty.
Wouldn't that be great? Or
you're going to take him out. You're going to be the one.
Yeah, it'll be me, Honey Boo Boo, and Duck Dynasty. Yeah.
I don't like this newfound success.
I know, right? Look at that. We want to see Mike again.
Yeah, no, I'm going to stay just as much of a douchebag as I've always been.
Very good. Then you fit in perfectly here. Mike, thanks so much
Thank you
for coming in.
Thank you.